There is a UN presence in Mongolia, as Mongolia is one of the countries of the UN, which has been for over a decade now. So now there is a whole UN house in Mongolia, I guess you all know that. One of the biggest UN agencies in here is the UNDP, what I work for, but also there are other ones. For example, UNFPA, UNICEF, UNESCO, IMO, LAO, there are a lot of others, probably some of the abbreviations ring a bell for you, I'm not sure if you know them, but UNDP is one of them. So that's where I work, that's also where all my colleagues are, where we all are, so definitely if you need any more questions or clarifications, don't hesitate to either ask questions now or also seek us at the UN House, which I will also give you more information about a bit later. Just to clarify a little bit about landlocked countries, as you mentioned, I wouldn't say that landlocked is a bad thing to say or a pejorative meaning. Definitely, if we look, for example, at Switzerland, that's a landlocked country as well, and they're doing quite well. So I wouldn't like to put the geographical distinction of a country being landlocked as something bad per se. So, but we will definitely talk about it a little bit later. Just one quick question. Does everyone understand good English? Yes. Is it good? Yeah? You all understand? Perfect. Well, if you do not understand, just don't hesitate to raise your hand or something for clarification. I'm obviously not also a native English speaker, so I understand if you don't understand something or if you have problems understanding some words or terms. So I will start with something a little bit more about landlocked countries in general, and then tell you a little bit more about what we actually do and how we are trying to help. So these are all of the landlocked countries in the world. So you can see there are quite a lot of them, 32 in total to be precise. So landlocked developing countries, maybe some of you do not know the shortcut on its own. I suppose if you do not work in the business and you're more maybe environmentally oriented, you might not know that. But landlocked basically is a country that is not fully developed, which means that the human development index is either on the lower scale, plus it does not have access to the water, of course, or to the sea or any bigger body of water. And the majority of LLDCs are in Africa, so this is the major issue, but the second biggest continent where the landlocked countries are, LLDCs are, is in Asia. You can see the full list in here, so 16 countries in Africa, 10 in Asia, 4 in Europe, and 2 in Latin America. In here, I don't know if I have some core geographer in here. Is someone studying geography or being a geographer in here? No, that's good, because sometimes I have a bit of an issue, and I was thinking about it a lot, if Azerbaijan and Armenia should be on the Europe side or should be on the Asian side. Me as a European, I would say it's Asia, but here in Asia, I feel like people are more towards the Europe, so I have it in Europe. But that's, of course, a minor thing. So these are all of them. There are a lot of things that LLDCs have in common, of course. Well, you might think, well, Mongolia and Paraguay or Bolivia don't really have much in common, right? But they actually do. There is a lot of things that even the two countries that seem very much different have something in common. Well, of course, the first thing that seems very obvious is there is no direct access to the water and or to the body of sea, which is mostly a problem for trade, which I will talk about a little bit later. But also there are other things. For example, that there are much greater costs exporting something. So if and which also could be something that the countries may strive to change later on. For example, now I just mentioned Mongolia and Bolivia, who both are or could be potentially very big meat exporters, right? However, Bolivia is very good at it. It's quite a big percentage of Bolivia's GDP. Unfortunately, in Mongolia, it's not really the case. So there are some things that maybe the countries can learn from each other. So this is something that we are doing as a think tank, and we are trying to let countries to learn from each other, which I will also talk about a bit later. So there are some common issues, but some countries are overcoming them better than the others. So this is something to work on. So of course, if you can read that, I don't want to read that for you. Can everyone read that very well? Even you in the back, can you read that? No? Yes? Well, I'm sure that, is it possible to share the presentation afterwards? Yeah? Okay, so the presentation will be online, I guess, on the MUST website or somewhere, but basically the main characteristic and main things that LLDCs have in common is the remoteness, dependent on the infrastructure and everything on the, as it is a transit country, so it definitely has some problems with infrastructure and all of the administrative processes. We see that very often with trade between Mongolia and China, for example. There are some rules that already are set from China, and there is not really much of a way to go around them, since we don't really have much of an option. So there are definitely those, and of course remoteness, the geographical remoteness to other regions. So this is the bit of an overview of the main challenges. So the lack of the direct access to the sea contributes to the remoteness to the major markets, and of course then dependency on those few markets. Here we are talking about China. In Latin America we can talk about Brazil, we can talk about Argentina. In Africa that would be the main market would be South America, so that's different for every region. Of course in Europe we are talking about the European Union being to the main market, but the routes to the main market are always very limited due to the remoteness, and also due to the poor infrastructure that is much more costly to build on land than on the sea. Then of course, smaller population, that's mostly the issue of Mongolia, and then of course smaller market, because we cannot compare the markets of China or Russia with the Mongolian one. Here I would like to showcast a little bit. So I have export here and import on the next page. So you will see quite clearly what I'm trying to explain you here. First, with numbers, I'm an economist by profession, so with numbers I find it a bit easier to explain. So, for example, here you have the numbers of required documents for export. You see that in Denmark and Singapore, I chose one European and one Asian. The number of required papers, the documents that the countries need, is only 4, versus in Ethiopia and Burundi, which are the countries on the lower scale when we speak about the obstacles in trade, is 8 or 9, which is obviously more than double. The same when we talk about the numbers day of export, which is 5 and 5. And now we see it's 44, staggering number of 44 days that it takes for Ethiopia to export to another country, which is obviously a huge constraint. There are a lot of things, a lot of materials, a lot of objects, subject, whatever you want to sell, that cannot even last that long. There are perishables. I already mentioned meat, I can mention dairy, I can mention fresh vegetables, everything that could be, or even, not even about food, but even electronics, if we talk about that, something that is very crucial to enter a market in a certain time period for it to distribute. Sometimes we just miss the window where people are very interested in certain electronics, right? And now it's gone. We know how quick that is, right? The need is really high, the second month not really. So when country takes so long to export, that's obviously a huge problem. Same, of course, not only we are talking about time, we're also talking about money. You can as well see then Denmark, it's a bit expensive also. If you've ever been to Denmark, it's an incredibly expensive country, so I'm not surprised. But still, the number is 2 or 3 times lower than countries that do not have the sea access. The same comes to the import. I will not explain that again, but you see that for both import and export, the numbers are much higher for landlocked countries versus the countries with sea access. I could choose another countries. The numbers are really similar for all of the LLDCs. Some are a bit higher, especially the European LLDCs like Armenia and Azerbaijan, because they are much more connected to the world market, especially the market of the European Union, but the numbers are still much higher. So here also with the import numbers that also explain why everything is actually much more expensive than in here than, for example, in China. A lot of the electronics, a lot of clothes, and a lot of other things might be a bit expensive, and it's also due to Mongolia or in this case, Ethiopia or Burundi. There also a bit of a graph just to explain, just to show you that from the 32 LDCs, actually their economic standing is not quite good, because from the 32, 16 of them are also least developed countries, so the countries that are really on the lower scale. Now we are talking about Human Development Index. I guess, do you all know the Human Development Index, HDI? Is it all common? Yeah, I'm not sure how common that is, yeah. So they are definitely the least developed, and also another 13 countries from the 32 are also heavily indebted. This is a case mostly for the African countries, but also for other countries that already have the burden, not only that they are landlocked, but also have other burdens like being the least developed or being heavily indebted. So that's definitely making their standing much worse. Here is a bit more about the Human Development Index. As you can see, I picked only the countries that that are the LLDCs. So this is not all of the countries in altogether, because they would probably be much bigger, with more than 100 countries in the world. So you can see that the worst 5 Human Development Indexes are all in the countries that are LDCs. So not only that that the LDCs are not doing quite well when it comes to economy, but also when it comes to development. So basically that. So the distribution again, to show you, not all of the LDCs are least that underdeveloped, but also there are 8 countries that are in the high human development. Very high human development, none of the LDCs are obviously there, because then there would only be landlocked and not developing countries. But most of the countries you can see is the low development, the human index. Here, this is one of the parts of the Human Development Index. It's life expectancy. So you can see the life expectancy of the global average. There are only 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, okay, if I stretch it, 5 countries are on the global average. Unfortunately, Mongolia is not one of them, if I'm looking at it. But it's definitely, again, show you that there is still something that should be progress that needs to be made, that needs to be something changed, especially when it comes to, again, I'm talking as an economist, but again, comes to trade, comes to elevating the economic development. Of course, when we have that and when the country is standing a little bit better, there are other things that we should concentrate on. For example, as now we have a huge problem with pollution, right? So if the country is standing better economically, we would have more resources to actually put into elevating the life quality in here. So what are we doing about it? As I told you, we are an international think tank for landlocked developing countries. So this is our main subject of our work. So this is my team. I'm the one on the right, which is, I guess, quite clear. The other of my colleagues, so it's 6 of us in total. We all have headquarters in the UN House, so the building just behind us is the UN House. If you want to find us, we are just on the ground floor. The rest of my colleagues, they would join me, but they're unfortunately on a mission abroad. They're in Australia at the moment, attending a conference about landlocked developing countries, of course. And I want to tell you a little bit more about what we are trying to do and how we are doing it. So by having this think tank, by having this institution, very soon will be an international institution on its own, standing on its ground and only being financed and also supported by the member states. Now we have 10 member states. then we are trying to advocate for these issues. What exactly what I just explained you. There are a lot of things and a lot of people in the world who don't really know about these issues, right? So we need to advocate for the LLDCs. We need to explain that there are some certain constraints that Mongolia might have, just based on their geography, based on nothing else. So that's what we are mostly trying to do on a lot of international levels. So attending meetings, attending conferences, a lot of research, exchange, etc. We are also trying to share the experience, as I told you, with Bolivia and Mongolia. There are also a lot of other examples. For example, we did quite successful study on Nepal and how Nepal is gaining the sea access to India, and we are hoping to use the same. So what legislative they use, what kind of administrative issues there were, how did they gain even the way through India, and how Nepal is actually accessing the sea. So that information and that knowledge might be used in another country, and maybe another LLDCs may use that kind of strategy that Nepal used and making their own. So we are trying to do that. And of course we are also doing all of the consultation, we are briefing the governments, we are providing the information for anyone who is interested, also for the people who are not interested, because we are trying to push that information as far as we can. These are some of our papers that we have published in the past, I think all of them are in the past 2 years. So a lot of the study, the one that is down there, the free blue, there are on connectivity. So there are also 3 case studies on connectivities in LLDCs. One of them is about connectivity on travel, like travel connectivity, how that can help. One is about ICT connectivity, that's a study from Azerbaijan. And the last one is about trade, of course. It's something that I already talked about. But so these, for example, are done by the University of Sydney, who and the researchers went to all of the countries and researched how those countries have overcome the obstacles. For example, the case in Azerbaijan was quite interesting. There was a case of leapfrogging. You all know what leapfrogging is? It's kind of when you jump ahead. So when you are, for example, in technology, Azerbaijan was quite probably a decade ago, stuck on the Soviet time cables, etc., being not that very technologically advanced, and other countries went through the gradual development of technologies, right, improving the cables and abandoning the cables and doing this and that. But Azerbaijan, instead of following this gradual development, just went ahead and skipped other countries and are already jumped and leapfrogged to the modern days. So there's something that other countries can learn from that, and can jump ahead and kind of be on the level as the most modern and most developed countries in the world, without going through this gradual, very expensive, very long process of improvement. So this is some of our studies. For you as researchers or members of academia or anyone interested in these issues, we have, of course, as I said, we are settling in the UN house. So this is where we are. And this is one of our rooms, the one on the left. This is actually once they install the computer there, they will be my office, but not yet, as you can see. And this is also a mini library that you can see. The picture is a little bit of cut, but on the left side there are all of our studies. So I also would like to invite you, if you have any other questions regarding these issues and issues of landlocked developing countries or something similar, you can always contact us. You can come freely to the library, borrow the books if you like, or take copies of our research papers if you're interested in that. If it's something that you're working on, if you feel that's something that you might use at your work or during your research, there's no problem. You can always come and contact us. This is some of the work that we have done, a bit of a research. The one on the right is me and my colleague actually installing an exhibition of our photographies. It's at the UNS GAP meeting in Bangkok this May, and the one downstairs is also another presentation about what we have done. The one in the left corner is our interim director, Mr. Orbayer, who is giving opening speech to one of our research paper was about the economic impact of the corridors in between of Russia and China, which was one of our most recent studies. And also what I would like to invite you, if you have further questions or if you have further inquiries, we also have e-library, electronic e-library, where also our publications are not, well, they're also in the e-library, but they are a bit different, which you can find in here, our publications. But in the e-library, we also not only have our papers, but we also have papers of our institutions, of our other universities, of anything that is even remotely connected to all of these issues, and something that other subjects could use for then their enrichment, etc. So that would be all from me. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I answered all of your questions. If you have any question or something that interests you, please don't hesitate.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. From the audience, I expect many questions regarding this presentation. Mongolia is one of the landlocked countries, so we have seen many problems, as she mentioned. Mongolia has the connection only bordering country like Russia and China. So even though Mongolia is quite abundant in natural resources, the many minerals dug up, but nonetheless the export limited to just the neighboring countries. I think there is the biggest problem, and as you mentioned, so in this regard, I expect you have many questions to ask. Please ask.
Okay, I'm just wondering, have you ever done specifically